And hello, everybody, and welcome to the Pixel Classroom podcast live stream episode. And for audio, this will be episode 214 today. And I've got a really great guest on here. Been trying to assemble this for a while. We finally were able to get everything on match. But they bring 20 years of heart, hustle, and hands-on leadership and experience. She is a licensed clinical social worker and Max certified coach. She has also served as a school social worker, principal, superintendent, got the whole 9 years, two-time principal of the year, founder of Spark Hope EDU. And of course, she brings hope system, habits, optimism, outlook, purpose, and excellence to share all the good stuff to hope, love, joy, and education. So I'd like to welcome the one and only Dr. Brandi Kelly there to the Pixel Classroom podcast. How are you today there, Kelly?
I am doing well, Ryan. Thanks for having me on the show. I look forward to our conversation.
Oh, I know. It's a little part here too. Here, let me get us a little bit more higher end, looking like a little Schwave on the live stream there. Look at our little pieces. Oh no, I want that one. There we go. There we go. There we go. Now we're getting that purple in there. I mean, it's November. It's Epilepsy Awareness Month, so I make sure the purple is over here too. So I see that a little bit on your Hope sweatshirt there here on the live stream. But Brandi, give us a little bit more about you. How did you come into education? I mean, you were a clinical, social worker that went into education. You were a principal one twice, and you were a superintendent. I mean, you've gone quite a lot here in your career.
Yeah. Now, if you want the long story, Ryan, I'll try to abbreviate it as much as possible. But it all started when I was 15, and my brother Brandon and our little brother Dustin went horseback riding on one Saturday afternoon. Long story short, Brandon went into that creek on his horse that day, and he never came home.
Oh man.
And that trauma really shaped who I would become. I had no idea how much at the time. As a 15-year-old teenager, that day specifically, I was getting ready to go to prom. And we didn't have cell phones back then. So my parents sent me on to prom. They went looking for Brandon, had no idea what was in store for us. And it wasn't until I got to prom that somebody else had heard through small town stories sharing through the grapevine that Brandon was gone. And of course, we still held hope. We didn't know that he was gone at that point in time because we didn't find him. Saturday, he went in. Sunday was Mother's Day, but divers pulled his body out of the creek about a mile from where he went in. Day after
we had somebody local that was the same with him. They were just a set of friends, been in and out all the time in the creek. One friend went in, they never found him. They did a search. They found him 2 miles down from the stream of where he originally went into. And they people were shocked because, first of all, was not rushing, hadn't rained in a few days. Him and his friends had been there many times over the years. Nothing ever. And another thing, it was middle of summer. It wasn't like, oh, spring or that rush, or it's winter, the water's getting cold. And unfortunately, they found out that he had broken his ankle, and he just basically got rushed into that. But yeah, I mean, it spread out. Granted, cell phones available, but they didn't find him until the next day. And like I said, 2 miles down from where he went in, unfortunately.
Yeah. And each day is a gift. I mean, we don't know what is in store for us whenever we wake up our eyes in the morning, right? So we have to approach the day with a positive outlook. And for me, the other thing that really gave me hope in that difficult time in my life was the community. Brandon's classmates are amazing. They call themselves the 95ers now. He would have graduated high school in 1995.
Year before me, yeah, because I was 96.
Yeah. So he was that kid. So for the educators listening today, he was that boy that was a little bit ornery. He didn't really want to be in school. He wanted to be outside exploring and doing other things hands-on. And he was also that kid that had a heart of gold. And I'm sure people listening have a kid in mind. I certainly, from my time in education. But the community showed up for us, both as classmates, the teachers, the principals, the community at large. And that gave me my first glimmer of hope, and it really shaped who I would become. So I became a school social worker, and then a principal, and then a superintendent. And along that journey, that experience, that trauma, that early trauma really helped me to connect with the people that I served. And it informed, like I said before, who I am, my values, my vision, my mission. And I believe it's so incredibly important that we align who we are and our values, vision, and mission with the organization or the school district that we work in. And when there is that alignment, hope rises and we can accomplish the impossible together.
I think that's very powerful, especially sharing that story of what happened with him and everything. I mean, my son's school district sadly has gone through two things. Friend of
Yeah.
mine, unfortunately, hospice care probably is not going to be with us trying to make it out till Christmas, but there, that community is already sharing everything else. She said her goodbyes. She was a guest on my podcast here in the studio, or my office, like I like to call it. So, but it is all amazing how that it really has gone with all that with those people and everything themselves too. When my current district, even though I worked at years ago, about 2 weeks after we're in there, they have what was called Murph Day, and he was a longtime math teacher. That was his nickname, Murph, who unfortunately passed away from cancer. And there was always a lot of show up too, and a lot of that community still works with a lot too, because I mean, it was several years ago. I mean, all those students that knew him have moved on themselves and everything else, and a lot of those teachers are there still, as well as even the administration and that. So it was like I got to know who he was and everything else, knowing that and how the community had pulled together years earlier. I remember reading a story about him, but until you were really there, I didn't really get the whole story on him and what he
Yeah.
had gone through
Yeah.
myself. So it was kind of amazing how the powerful the community was for that too. And as I say, unfortunately, we've lost a lot of good educators, from admin to even special aid eds to, they said, custodial staff, and how that works with the with the community and the pieces of that too. I think one thing it is when people remember them in areas too, but sometimes they get forgotten, sadly. Like, that was so many years ago. My own parents themselves remember a teacher that passed away. I think my mother was a sophomore and everything else too. And I even found the old yearbook about them, but and his name's on, they have a memorial wall over at the school. But there are some people who, there, anybody from her classes, yes, I remember him, or I don't remember him because I never had him.
Right.
I just remember it was a big deal because somebody hadn't passed away who was a teacher in there too. And I think his was suddenly too. I don't remember the full story of it too, but it was very suddenly. I think he was there a good 6-7 years. And remember, this is 69, so that was a very community area that too, to lose somebody like that, because when he had passed away, it was a big deal. But and he is, like I said, inscribed in the wall too of everything that happened on that.
Absolutely. And you're making a really good point that when we go into education, well, actually in life, I mean, when you think about it, in life in general, it's not if adversity strikes you, it's when. We are all going to face some adversity, some obstacles, some trauma, and we don't get to decide what that is. That is outside of our circle of control. But through my trauma and my adversity that I have faced, and Brandon's story is just one example of that, I say that hope isn't wishful thinking. It's a practical leadership system. And in my book, Lead with Hope, I teach leaders how habits, optimistic outlook, purpose, and excellence are combined to create resilient people and high performing culture.
Yeah, I mean, and it's right here too. And like I said, when before I was even part of Teach Better, I remember reading up on this for one of our book studies. I was supposed to get an issue. Unfortunately, I was going through a time at the district I was in. I wasn't going to be there much longer, and as much as I wanted to, get on the thing, I just didn't feel like there was a point of doing it because I wasn't going to be part of this community anymore. But and I mean, going through the pieces too about talking about your personal, overcoming tragedy, like you said with Brandon, but also reflection and personal stories. I mean, if you've heard my podcast, especially, unfortunately, I have lost some people in the past year and everything, and that was a very difficult part too. And I even said myself, they were not perfect people, and there's things that weren't there, but they did directly reflect on that and what it did teach me, as well as parts of that. Because like you said, I mean, one thing here is about blueprint of cultivating positive mindset and building consistency and fostering culture of hope in our schools, because we all go through issues. I mean, some schools, it's like maybe they're doing great and the principal retires or several teachers retire, and it's all about rebuilding, and then all of a sudden that kind of goes out in that district or community, and they have to start over again. It wasn't tragic, but it was just like those people moved on. and they had to rebuild, and now they've got to rebuild again. And sad to say, it's unfortunately not passing the torch. It's more of like, no, here's the hammer, good luck, and maybe you'll build something, or unfortunately, maybe the tower will fall and break. It's a lot of that. So how does leading with hope really kind of help with those communities and school districts for them, whether they're sadly gone through tragedy or they're just trying to start over a new chapter in their own books?
Yeah, and I'll use my most recent experience in leadership. When I was a superintendent at Mount Olive School District, about a decade ago, they went through a very, very difficult strike. And some of the teachers that went through that strike are still in that school district. And it did create a scar. A wound that then turned into a scar. And it still affects the culture in that school district today. And as a leader going into a difficult situation, whether it be a school district, an organization, or even, let's be real, we're all life role leaders. We're all sisters, brothers, mothers. We are a leader in our life role as well. And for me, it's all about an intentional practice of self-reflection to build up your self-awareness. When we know who we are, what we value, what is our vision and our mission in life and in our leadership. And when we get really clear on that and clear on where we want to go, then it's much more effective. Our leadership is much more effective. And just a quick definition, Ryan, of hope, it's just simply the ability to set important goals, find clear ways or pathways to achieve those goals, and then finally to have the drill and the I guess I would call it the agency to stick to that plan. And that comes directly from research. Dr. Rick Schneider coined the term hope theory, kind of the science of hope. And that is really the underpinnings of my book, is that we have to have those goals, those pathways, and that motivation to create the future that we envision. And when we're clear on that, it helps us to do that. And when we implement a system of hope in our lives and in our leadership, it helps us to achieve the outcomes we want to achieve. But the very, very first step is just self-reflection and improving your level of self-awareness, because change starts with me. And so it's kind of an inside-out proposition.
Yeah, and I mean, my own children's book, Small Hope, which of course was about a guinea pig that comes to a thing who is actually an alien visitor, but he inspires hope in the family that adopts him because they have gone through the loss of a loved one. And as the story goes, some people are like, well, he kind of didn't. He just kind of inspired them to keep living their lives, but it was helping them figure out their goals and everything. When the story starts, you have a 10-year-old who has lost the mother and a father that is just trying to go. And why the story is more between S'mores and Janice, the truth is, you see, as time moves on and she grows up, she starts having those different goals and different pieces, goes to college, and he moves on himself to continue that. And some people didn't realize, but then they're like, that's actually a really good story and message. I said, yeah, it is. I mean, it is. But if you think about it, that's what he's doing. I mean, it just shows that they're going through a tragedy, but it's them moving on, but it's also them trying to find hope in their own lives and continue moving on with that. And that's actually where that part of the story came. And I don't think it'll be, but I think you perfectly defined it perfectly, exactly what hope is in the areas too. I know I've had my tragedies and unfortunately setbacks. I mean, like I said, I was not expecting to be in my 5th school district in the last 8 years here too, but it's like going through those goals and everything. And segueing that over too, it's also going over here too, how your services work here too. I mean, you said themselves about setting those goals. How do you help set that up with your counseling and your I should say services?
Yeah, my coaching. I have what I call the Hope Fueled Leadership Kickstart. And in the Hope Fueled Leadership Kickstart, that's really my signature offer right now. What I do is I work with leaders. And I know leaders, especially in school districts, are busy. You have so many things coming at you each and every day. And you can't always predict what's going to be coming at you on any given day. But what I do is I partner with them and we embark on a journey. It's just a short, powerful, private coaching engagement. And it is that one-on-one situation where I expertly guide them through key assessments to assess and envision what it is that they want to produce. I help them reclaim their vision, really, because when we start out, I know I had a very clear vision. I know a lot of the people that I have coached along the way, they have a vision, but then you come in with a school or a district or an organization and you're dealing with lots of different people. And the people business is messy. We're in the people business and it is messy. So sometimes because of distractions and things like that, we lose our vision a little bit, or it gets dulled or displaced. So I help them reclaim their vision and really tap into their confidence to make those decisions that they need to make. And then finally, they leave this engagement with a very clear roadmap.
Mm.
And that roadmap, what I encourage them to do is every 90 days to cycle back through the hope cycle, which is assess and envision, focus and act, and then reflect and realign. And if they will do that with this hope and action plan, it helps them stay on course and keep their values, vision, and mission aligned. And it's a very impactful, hope fueled leadership kickstart to optimize their outcomes.
Wow, that's absolutely incredible. I mean, I've sadly been in districts where, like I said, they want to do it, but they don't have a roadmap, or if somebody
Right.
has left them a roadmap, they do take a different path, but it usually finds its way too. One thing I see a lot of, both in experience and even heard stories, is they get a good roadmap and
Mhm.
then something comes over, as they say, turns the whole map upside down,
Yeah.
and then they have to start over. Then they try this, and then 2 years later they're back on the same map, which
Mhm.
honestly it was like you were fine, you could
Yeah.
have just kept going. I don't understand why you felt like, well, this doesn't matter to us anymore. It's like, does it not matter to you, everyone, or it just doesn't matter to you? And now you've changed that whole line just to turn around 2 years later. It's like, okay, back to the original plan. It's like, well, if it was working, why change that?
Mhm. And Ryan, I think that we can learn a lot by just looking at our teachers and students' interactions in the classroom, right?
Mm,
The need for teachers to really bring their students in the classrooms into that collaboration so that there's ownership for their learning. That's that purpose piece. We have to know why we're doing what we're doing as human beings. That's just how we're wired. And the same thing's true with school leadership. The vision for a school district can't be just my vision or your vision. It has to be a shared vision, a vision where you invest your time and your energy collaborating around what are the organization's values, and do my values align with that? What are the organization's visions? And does my vision for my life align with that? And then the same thing for mission. And if there's alignment between the leader and the organization, then the leader needs to collaborate and clearly communicate all of those things. And then the people in that organization need to come alongside and design what that strategic plan or that school improvement plan or whatever their guiding plan is for the organization or the school district. Come alongside them and come up with the goals and objectives together. And then there has to be a scoreboard to keep track of how are we doing, celebrating our small wins, celebrating our big wins, and being very clear about the communication, celebrating victories, and also celebrating the progress over perfection.
yeah, and I think that's a great idea, a great point. Progress over, perfection. It's like some people just want to get it perfect and be like, "Look at
Yes.
us, and we got the banners up, and we got the award piece on that." I'm like, "Well, that's great, but have we really progressed, or have you gone back to a style that worked 15 years ago and you just finally, as they say, took 2 steps back just to take 1 step forward. And I
Mhm.
think that's a very good point too. I mean, you have it very real, I'm posting about the counseling, the one-on-one, the
Right.
check backs and everything, which I think is a lot too. I mean, somebody who is also certified instructional coaches, worked, the 2 I work with now are absolutely incredible, but they
Yeah.
like to come back to me like, how's it working? They didn't just give me a one and done and you finish and you were done. But they come back or they, and I had one that emailed me just yesterday say, oh, hey, well, blah, blah, blah. How's that going? I know you get the informal Tuesday. I was like, oh, actually, it's fine. And then they snuck up on me looking something I did in a lesson here. I was just talking about the other day with my loan policies and loan sharks and dressed up as the Shady Sam character. And they were like, well, no, that's fantastic. I feel like you've come back to who you were, apparently told us. But it was a really nice check. And they said, okay, let's just see how things go the next couple weeks and we'll check back in January. It's like, it's kind of nice to have that check back feature where instead I had to either set up the appointments or I had to, sadly, as they say, free 2 minutes and wanted to talk. I do like that, there is that piece and you also, keep that as well going.
Yeah. Yeah. And, Ryan, in the show notes, I hope you will put in the offer that I'm providing for the listeners to download a chapter in my book. But
Mm-hmm.
on that landing page with the free chapter, there's going to be a hope assessment that they can take. And I believe that what you measure is what grows. And so when you're really clear about what your goals are and what you measure, you can go back to that and see how you're doing, kind of the old pre-post surveys that we do in education. And with the hope assessment, it's focused just on the leader, just on the individual. Because again, and I say this frequently, it's an inside out situation here. It's an inside out process where change starts with me. And so as we're doing this hope assessment, you can see around the 4 pillars of hope: habits, optimistic outlook, purpose, passion, perseverance, and excellence, how you're doing, how you're progressing, what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are. And I operate on a strengths-based perspective because, again, what you focus on is what you grow. So I think we get it wrong in education when we only focus on the deficits. I'm not saying to dismiss the deficits by any means, but we have to start from a strengths-based model and build on our strengths to overcome our deficits. And for the leader, the hope assessment helps them to do that.
Yeah, and I think that's a fantastic point. And actually, yeah, I always do in the show notes. Some people see the live streams and they go to the main audio. Like, oh, I got this. Oh, I can click on this link. I mean, one thing, and people and future guests don't know about this is I always do the show notes on a Google Slides. It's just much easier for it too. But it's easier to get that kind because I can get hyperlinks, I can get the thing, and it's just so
Yeah.
much easier to copy and paste that. Because people always say, oh, the description is kind of the point, and then they see the audio version. They're like, wow, there's a lot more detail. I said, well, yeah, because most likely people are doing the audio version,
Mhm.
people who are listening to this right now. That's why I do that too, versus, the live stream's a good thing because it gets a little bit more of a broad audience and few things, but it still keeps those show notes. And I'm always making sure I keep those notes, those links working correctly as well. So, I mean, that's it. And like I said, I was so, you're like, oh, this is perfectly filled out. Brandi did a really job done. And speaking of podcasts, you have your own here too, because, for some reason, us as educators, we like to just do the podcast because I think
Mhm.
this reaches our area too. I don't think I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't enjoy doing it. So,
Right.
your own podcast. So, how does that, how does that, do on your basis as well? Because, like I
Yeah.
said, I listen to my episodes when I get a chance here and working on a little construction. But talk a little bit about it, what led to it, and how you structure yours compared to some other people or me.
Sure. Yeah, if you don't mind, I'll tell a brief story about this, kind of the beginning of the podcast. So I was at a superintendent conference in Springfield in September of 23. And across the room, I was drinking my coffee. My laptop was open. I don't even remember what I was working on, but I saw Adam Welcome. He was one of the speakers at that.
Yeah, I know Adam very well. Adam's
Yeah.
hopefully going to be on us in a future episode.
Awesome. Well, he was the first guest on my podcast. And the reason why I asked him to be my first guest on my podcast was because of that conversation that we struck up that day in Starbucks. And, I was sharing with him my vision for starting Spark Hope EDU, beginning with a podcast, but I was telling him all of the reasons why I needed to wait. I needed to get several episodes batched so that when life got busy, I had, episodes in the in the bank to go ahead and release. And he looked at me and he said, "What are you waiting for? Why not?"
Mhm.
And it kind of jarred something loose in me. And I'm like, okay, a challenge accepted. Let's go ahead and do the first episode in November. And Adam, will you be my guest on my first episode? And he said, yes, of course. And so I wanted to start the podcast to share stories of hope. I really want to share a message of hope because I believe in not only the system of hope, but also the power of hope. And, hope is a science. It's a measurable thing that we can use to improve ourselves and the cultures that we lead. But it's also, its basis for me is really from faith, because my hope in God and in my faith basis has really helped me get through a lot of the adversity that I have faced in my life. So hope means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, and it's not just one thing to me. But I want to share that. I want to share what hope means. I want to share that message of hope, and I want to share my system of hope. And the podcast lets me do that, and it lets me share the hope that other leaders have as well, change makers who are putting
Mhm.
that hope in action. And I love, love, love interviewing leaders and hearing about how they put hope in action in their schools.
Yeah, I mean, and I mean, I think that's it, and you're right. Adams, as I said, what are you waiting for? I mean, one thing
Yes.
too, hard to believe now. This is season 7, even though I started kind of in the middle of 2019 with some things. Originally, it was going to be epilepsy awareness. My wife, who's had epilepsy all his life, my grandfather, and I had the whole thing too. And it
Yeah.
kind of the was like, well, why don't you just do it? And then I did it, and then there wasn't really a lot going on to it. We couldn't really get guests. We really couldn't do many more of the parts too. And some people's like, well, why don't you just go with the education and just go there? It's like, well, I don't want to be just another educated podcast. Like, well, why don't you do some of your comics? Why don't you do this? Do reflection? And that's kind of what the Pixel Classroom is, where the acronym came, especially my back pains of mine with the pixel arts I've done myself, as well as passions, innovation, X factor, enthusiasm, leadership, because I've done them all and I've worked with them all. And it is tunes and sharing those messages to use those three about people who are passionate about something, innovative about something. People have an X factor that really just makes them stand out from anybody else, whether that is somebody like you, or I mean, I've had Ron Friends,
Mhm.
well-known comic book artist who was really more the inspiration of using the black costume inspired him, even though it was designed by another artist, and how he had done all that work himself too.
Mhm.
And a lot of people were just like, that's absolutely incredible. Like, I really just enjoyed hearing from him. He just seems like a normal guy. So he's a very nice, normal guy. And Ron's probably listening to me right now. He's like, yeah, that's right. I'm a nice, normal guy, right? But it was really interesting about how he got started, how he worked with it, but also how he put a little bit of his own stuff and how he's worked over the last hard to believe 40 odd years of
Yeah.
himself doing. He's been part of artist controversies, as well as just doing his job. I mean, he didn't do anything. He didn't say like, hey, they told me this and I kind of did this, and people were shocked. That then he's like, that's the business. It's like we always do something that just rattles somebody, and the truth is we're not doing anything wrong. We're not doing anything else. We're just doing our job. I mean, he's like, versus, oh, you told me to do this. He's like, okay, hold on a sec. I'm not going to do that. That's a little outside who I am as a person. But it's really interesting, how that is. And that's kind of how it's grown here. I mean, doing this, now, 6.5 years later, 7 seasons, going up to almost 225 episodes.
Yeah.
It's definitely sent the message, and I think it's worked. And it's always, it's amazing too. I mean, episodes like this, they always get hit, and it's like I do a reflection episode, and they get more views, more downloads, and it's like, really, the reflection episodes. But there's also a balance, because sometimes I've done several reflection episodes, and people just kind of start tuning out a little bit too.
It's a balance, isn't it? And
Yeah, it really is.
I think in education right now, people are looking for hope. They're looking for those things that they can do, the people they can surround themselves with, the practical strategies they can put in place to find hope. And preparing for this episode, I went back kind of into the arsenals, and I was looking at my research on the connection between hope and mental health. And it's a powerful reminder of the reality of education right now. High hope, there's a correlation to high hope and lower stress burnout reduction, and a greater sense of psychological well-being. And the reason for that is because leaders who cultivate that hope are building a protective factor for their mental health and their team's mental health. They're helping their employees feel a greater sense of control or agency, which we all want. We want voice and choice that lights up our brain, and a clear view of the future. That's through the pathways piece, that vision. People often in education, especially my entire career, I've heard people cite poor communication. And I would argue it's not necessarily that we don't have enough communication. It's just the clarity around the communication because the vision isn't clear. The vision isn't clear. And so, we need hope in education more now than ever, because in a recent 24-25 study, they said that right now, education is in a mental health crisis. This survey said that between 59 and 62% of educators report job-related stress, and more than half say they're experiencing burnout.
Yeah, and I that's a truth of myself too. Is I've worked myself through burn, and I hate to say it, it didn't hear. Yes, I switched careers 15 years ago, but there was a couple jobs where it did start and they got burned out. I remember my college job working in a movie theater, and I worked it just slowly after too. But it came a day where it just was burning me, and there were regulars who just could see it. And then finally, I just had it, and I walked out the door. And sadly, I wasn't the only person. I kind of inspired people to say, you know what, I can't do this either, and I've got to go too. But it was such an underlying issue. They just didn't want to take the thing. And I mean, let's face it, it's a movie theater. What's your two things? Show movies, make the money, and provide a nice community service, and give some people some money to pay their bills, and some free popcorn and entertainment.
Right.
And unfortunately, some other people saw it as like they were in this or in that or in charge of something that really was never there. And then when they didn't have any vision, or they weren't even following what the vision of the place was, which was like provide entertainment and good times. And people were just burnt out and angry. And then by the time those people did finally leave themselves, there was kind of a slight turnaround. But it did go through many hands, and now it's a different universe as it is. I mean, that was hard to believe, almost 24 years ago for me.
Yeah.
But I experienced it, and then I was at one place. Some people always ask me, like, why did you leave that one district? Because you had tenure, you were there, you were good. I said it's because I was burned out in something different that was not being addressed, and I had brought it up. And I said, if this would have been handled, I don't think I would have gone through it as much. And then, like I said, one of my biggest things, especially what happened with the district afterwards, was leaving suddenly, unfortunately, because of things. But I was so burnt out by the time I was told, hey, you're going to be leaving. And I was like, I am. And they're like, yeah. And I was so burned out. I was just so done because it was just doing. And then, unfortunately, the last couple weeks of school, I was just done. I just checked the boxes. I did it. I walked out the door, and I was just trying to figure out where I was going to go. And I was at the point. And there was a point where I said, maybe I do need to leave the classroom. Maybe I need to go take the instructional coach, go do the admin thing, which I was not bad at. And do that. And essentially nothing of that came about. And then getting back into a more younger things kind of reignited that, gave me back over here. And now I'm in a place where people see, like, I think he's back to who he used to be. I said, I'm getting there again. It's still feel of the burnout over shoulder. I mean, I work with a great staff, but you always worry about, like, you get an email from a parent, or you read something. Like, I read something from the old district. I'm like, oh, that again, man, that just stirs up some bad memories. But at the same time, it's like, why is that still going on? At what point do people just stop attacking you at that for over that reason? It's like, because it's like, we went through this a couple years ago and you're still angry. It's like, at what's going to be when this is all done, or you're not even have to worry about it, you're going to still be complaining about something. It's like, at what point do you not realize maybe you're just burned out for something completely different?
Yeah. And Ryan, what you're talking about there, whether you're talking about your experience in the movie theater or your experience in school districts where you feel burned out, it boils down to not feeling valued. When you don't feel valued, when you don't feel seen, heard, or valued, that's why people leave. They don't necessarily leave because there's too much work or because of the job. Because when you sign up to be an educator, we all know why we want to do that. We know that we want to help kids, right? But I believe that people leave because they don't feel seen, valued, and heard. And you went on to talk about the fact that when that happens, you experience burnout. And we have to start investing in our people, because the reality of the situation is those negative emails, those negative comments, those keyboard warriors, they're not going to stop.
No.
And it's not about you, it's about them. And so it's perspective, it's mindset. And if you know who you truly are and what your vision and your values, and connect that to your why, connect that to your purpose, and keep that front and center, have it written down and posted somewhere in your office where you can clearly connect with that every single day. I even recommend that the leaders that I work with don't start your day by opening your email. Start your day by reconnecting with who you are and whose you are, and align with your purpose. Set an intention for your day. It could be something very simple. My intention for today is to get out and visit 3 classrooms and talk to the teachers on not just a professional basis, but also a personal basis. How's your son doing? I know he was in the hospital last week. I just wanted to check in on you. Things like that. We're wired for connection. And it's when we get caught up in the busyness of life that we lose our vision. We lose the reason that we're here, which first and foremost, it's about the people. That's the hardest part of the job, but it's why we're here, and to improve student outcomes.
I think that's perfect. Mic drop right there perfectly with that. Wow. It's been amazing here with the episode and everything else here, and joining us today, Brandi. I know we had a couple conflicting issues, but thank you so much for sharing your story and come on here today. Where can people get a hold of you? What do you got coming up next year? I mean, hard to believe we're coming to the end of 2025 and into 2026 here. So what's going on with you for the next couple of months here?
Time flies when you're having fun. And I started Spark Hope EDU in December of 24. So it's amazing. It's coming up on its first year anniversary since I created the LLC. And I've been doing it full time now for about 6 months. And what I've got going on now is I've got several speaking engagements lined up. And if you are listening to this podcast and maybe you're starting to think about your beginning of the year welcome back address, and you want to start the year off with a message of hope, I'm scheduling right now to come into schools and organizations and to share that opening address with teachers and leaders and educators. I'm also, as I said before, offering the Hope Fueled Leadership Kickstart. I'm super excited about my partnerships one-on-one with that short, powerful private coaching experience that really helps you connect with your vision and to lead with hope and authenticity and purpose. And then thirdly, right now I am still promoting my first book that went out May of 2025, Lead with Hope, Building a System of Self-Efficacy. And I would just encourage listeners to check that out. In the show notes, you will find the link to the free chapter, the Hope Assessment, and you can go over to Amazon and buy my book. In addition to that, Brian, I'm working on a couple of other book projects right now. One of them is going to be a 30-day devotional journey. And the title of it is When Life Speaks. It's in editing right now, so I'm excited to promote that book when it's completed. And then I am also beginning work on a children's book, which love the children's book, because it's based on my first 2 grandsons, Jensen and Rhett, and just the love and the joy that they bring to my life every day. I want to share that with people. And I think I can do that through a story about their interactions and promoting kindness in our world.
I like that. Wow, there's some great things coming down the pipe for you there. Yeah, it looks really good. I mean, thank you. I mean, it's been really nice, very inspiring. Brandi, thank you so much for, being here, share. I mean, you got some great things coming up here for 2026, but yeah, I mean, it's amazing how fast that goes. Like, wait, my book was out this time. Wait, I started
I
this
know.
over a year ago. Wait, what? We're going to year 2. Maybe there's something to this.
Yeah, it is. It goes really fast. But, if listeners want to stay in touch with me, they can just visit sparkhopeedu.com. And I put out a weekly email called the Quick Spark. It's a really quick read, but in that quick spark, I give them a little tidbit, maybe a little lesson, a little reframe each week. And that helps them to stay connected with my newsletter and upcoming events, things going on my podcast. But that's a quick, easy way, and they can sign up on my website.
Nicely. That sounds good. I mean, and it is. Once I put up the website, those pop up right away about joining the list. And so there you go, listeners. You want to check out more of Brandi's work, you can go right ahead and do that. Subscribe, check out her book, and much more. And even, subscribe to her podcast on your favorite listening. So there we go. Now I'm also your marketer. For somebody who teaches marketing, I'll wait. I think sometimes I'm just a marketer for all my guests here. And hey, this is what she's got going. Get your discount today. No.
Absolutely. I appreciate it, Ryan.
You are welcome, Brandi. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Pixel Classroom podcast.
Thanks for having me.
And everybody else, thank you for liking and subscribing. Please follow us on our social network as well as Brandi's there. Will be in the show notes on the audio version up here as well. And on that note, everybody, I hope you have a wonderful day, and we will talk to you later.